Hello, Real Stuff listeners. On today's episode of the show, I got us a guest who's really popping off on social media at the moment. Lex Delarosa is a content creator, a mother, a wife. I was originally going to call her a TikToker, but she's actually almost doubled her TikTok following on Instagram now. She has over 500,000 people on Instagram watching her showcase her stay-at-home mom life and create daily video content. And this content kind of fits into the trad wife category, the traditional wife. However, she herself, as you will hear in this interview, does not identify with the term trad wife, and she doesn't call herself that. If you don't know Lex by name, odds are if you search for her name on social media, you will be like, oh yeah, I've seen this girl, because she has had a ton of content go viral lately. But her most notorious style of video is those baking videos where she's, making some sort of elaborate at-home meal and cooking in her kitchen with her neck tilted to the side in an interesting way and kind of an eerie smile plastered on her face. We, of course, get into her signature neck tilt in the interview, obviously, because that's definitely what's talked about or commented on most in her comments section. But as she's grown on social media, she's really started getting a little bit more lighthearted and actually poking fun at herself. And one of her main signature moves right now is trolling herself with a rude comment. So after she posts a video, she writes a rude comment to herself and she pins that comment to the top of her comment section. And it's almost like she's beating people to the chase. At this point, she's developed an incredibly supportive following and almost this army of people who support her and will fight back to people who are trolling her. And she herself also has really good clapbacks to trolls. So no matter what people are saying on her posts, she's not taking it too seriously. It's clear. It is easy to look at some of the content that she's creating and to feel judgmental of her, but before long, if you watch enough of her content and you look at her engagement section for long enough, you will start to realize that this girl is somewhat of a marketing genius. She really knows that she's inciting controversy and she's sparking up discussion in the comment section to increase that engagement. And guess what? It's working. She built this really big business. We get into everything from the change that it's brought about in her life to her financial situation, how she and her husband don't share their money. I was really fascinated by that part of the conversation. And overall, I just loved speaking to her. She is a lovely person. One thing I found really fascinating about the conversation, which I bring up in our dialogue, is that both of us work. We both have a very similar job. We're both full-time content creators now. However, she calls herself a stay-at-home mom and I don't. And yet we're both staying at home, quote, working. I guess the biggest difference is that I have a nanny who's here present with my son when I'm working and she doesn't. So from my perspective, it's like, how much can you really dive into work when you're simultaneously parenting at the same time? And I guess her kids are past the point of napping, so she has like a quiet time for them in the middle of the day where she tries to get her work done. But I am fascinated by the amount of content she's pumping out while she is technically a full-time stay-at-home mom. I think you're going to find this conversation interesting. And if nothing else, it's a nice peeled back look kind of behind the lens at a person who in the past few years just became a content creator out of nowhere. I feel like prior to 2020, almost everyone I knew that was a content creator sort of did it the way I did it, where we were like slow and steady, trying to build up a following on Instagram, posting all the time, and maybe amassing a small audience here and there. But these days, especially on platforms like TikTok, you can really just start blowing up overnight and have millions of people coming to your page immediately. And Lex is one of those people who, within just a couple years of posting, has grown and gotten to the same stage I'm at, where she now has management and a team running her brand partnerships. And it's interesting to talk to someone who got into this career in a very different way from me. I hope you like this conversation. As always, please tag the Real Stuff Pod on Instagram and at Lucie B. Fink if you're listening. Take a screenshot and let us know the time code where you're finding something interesting in this chat. And as always, please drop some comments on the Real Stuff social media or send us a DM with ideas for future guests or future episode topics. We've got some really fun stuff on the way, and I hope you like this episode with Lex Delarosa. Let's get into it.
People always think that I grew up in this very trad wife style home, and that was not the case. I had a very normal, traditional upbringing. Like I went to public school. Both my parents worked. Very normal childhood. My parents got divorced when I was like just going into high school. Had a great relationship with both of my parents. So my mom has recently passed away.
I saw that. I'm really sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah, she was amazing, but not like a traditional homemaker, like she was so much fun. She had a lot of like hobbies like outside of the house, like had a lot of friends. She was very, very like social butterfly, just a very fun person. The way that I raise my boys and the way that I parent is like very different from the house that I grew up in because I'm like kind of the opposite of that. Like I'm more like introverted. I love being at home. I love homemaking things. And so I don't know, it's just something that kind of came naturally to me. I feel like sometimes people are just like born a certain way and it's not so much their upbringing because I was brought up very differently and I had no problem with the way that I grew up, but I just had a different vision for my life like once I had my own family. So
As you were growing up and you're a young girl and you kind of see the way your household is functioning, was it at that young age that you had this spark of what you want your future to look like?
yeah, I remember being like really little and just always really looking forward to being a mom and like having kids. I just always knew I was going to do that and was always really looking forward to that, even from when I was like really, really little. And then once I was an adult and I moved to San Diego, I nannied full time while I was going to school. And I think when I was doing that is when I like really kind of like honed in on how I wanted my home life to look like after being in other people's homes and seeing different family dynamics because I was a full-time nanny like taking care of, someone else's kids for, 40 plus hours a week and I really enjoyed it, but when I was doing that I was like I don't want to like have to hire a me to do these things. So that's when I really like locked in on the kind of future I wanted to have once I did have my own family.
So early on, you used the phrase trad wife. And just for people who don't know what that means, trad is short for traditional.
Yeah.
And if someone calls themselves a trad wife, what bucket is that putting them in?
So I don't call myself a trad wife. I get lumped into that category a lot. I think just because of like what is portrayed on social media. Like I stay home with my kids. I am really into homemaking things. I'm always in the kitchen. Like those are very like traditional values, but I don't lump myself into the category of the trad wife niche. I feel like a lot of it is very like religion based and like, oh, the woman
Hmm.
submits to the husband and like I do these things to serve my husband and because the Bible tells me so. Or, like that's the vibe I get from like trad wife content that I see. And that's not really why I do, like why I live my life the way that I do. It's genuinely just like the things that I enjoy. And it happens to align with some of the trad wife values. Woman in the home, taking care of kids, house, dad leaves and works and pays the bills. So,
Got it. So you don't personally identify with that phrase. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. I have some more questions just about roles in the home and stereotypes and stuff like that. But first, I am so fascinated with your career and the way you've grown on social media and become this huge content creator that you are now. Can you take us back? My understanding is that you used to run a bakery on social media
yeah.
and then you started creating content. So, can you just tell us the story of how this whole thing started?
Yeah. So when I was nannying on the side, I had a little bakery business that I ran out of my apartment. So I was just like a single girl and I loved baking. I've always loved baking, being in the kitchen and, I wanted a little side income. So I was like, oh, I'll start making like birthday cakes and cookies and it was like a little creative thing for me to do. So that was what I did on the side of nannying. And then once I had my first son, I wasn't nannying anymore because I had my own baby to take care of, but I kept up with the bakery business because I still wanted like my own income and I just really enjoyed it. So after I had my second son, it got very, very difficult to run an in-home bakery and also take care of two small kids. They're less than 2 years apart. They're very close in age. So at that time I had like two legitimate babies. So it was a lot of work and I just got burnt out on, taking custom orders and dealing with like clients and stuff. And so I started posting my baking stuff online, like on TikTok and Instagram. And eventually, I think it was the beginning of 2023, like one of my videos blew up, like where I was making bread and butter and jam from scratch. Posted it on TikTok and it got like over 1 million views. And at the time for me, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is huge. Like
Yes.
I'm famous now off this. Because before then, it was like no one really cared. You know, it was like I was just posting that stuff for fun. And so after that, then like things just kind of like took off. And I was like, oh, like well, people did not like the videos at first. At first, I got a ton of hate on the videos. And I think that's why they were blowing up so much, just because of all the like the negative comments, you know, and everyone like jumping in on it. But I just kept doing it because I was like, well, I enjoy making this type of content. And then eventually there was like a shift where the positive comments outweighed the negative comments. And now people enjoy the videos that I make and it's not so negative.
And we will get into some of that negativity because that is very difficult to deal with for anyone, especially someone who's newly into the industry.
Yeah.
I feel like we'd be remiss on this podcast if we didn't at least just mention the head tilt in the baking videos, which was probably one of the earliest things that caused that stir and
Yeah.
caused people to freak out. So,
Mhm.
for people who maybe haven't seen any of Lex's content, in some of these baking videos, she's basically this Snow White beauty standing in her kitchen, cooking gently. Usually, you can hear the classical music that you're playing in your house in the background. And it's just the most peaceful, serene setup. Yet you are standing there as you bake. I guess I would call it you're kind of craning your neck as you cook. That was all people could talk about was,
Yes.
what's wrong with your neck? You must have slept poorly.
Yeah.
What's going on with her? Let's talk about the neck. Just get it out of the way.
Okay, so in the beginning, like those first videos that were like blowing up, you know, I was filming from a very particular angle in my kitchen. Like I have a pretty small setup, you know, there's really only one place that makes sense for me to put my camera to like film what I'm doing. And so, you know, it gets me from the side. And like we all have a favorite side. Like it happens to be my right side. So, you know, that's where I had my camera set up and that's where I would film from. And you know, I think like in the beginning, like I did not notice that I was like tilting my head a certain way, but people were like calling that out and being like, "Oh, what's wrong with your neck? What's wrong with your neck?" And I was like, "I do not know what you mean by that." And then like, you know, watching back or like reading the comments, I'm like, "Oh, it's because of like the angle I'm filming at and like, you know, I'm like tilted a certain way like while I'm pouring it." And I was like, "Okay, I get it." But then I like realized I'm like, "Okay, if that's like what people are going to comment on, like I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to like suddenly like shift what I'm doing to like blend in with everybody else's videos because these videos are like getting a ton of views and like there's a reason for that." So I just never changed what I was doing. And I was like, and whatever, like I look good from this angle. So and I still get comments like that. And it's funny to me. It was that and then the eyes closed, people thinking that my eyes are closed. And that also is just like I'm just looking down. Like my eyes are not closed.
At a certain point, it really seemed to me like you kind of shifted from maybe doing that inadvertently to, as you said, feeding into the fire and
Yeah,
just saying, okay, if this is what you're going to comment on and these are the videos that are going viral, then fuck it. This is what I'm going to do. This is the content I'm going to make. Every negative comment that this troll leaves is actually helping my page get sucked into the algorithm.
exactly. Yeah. So that's why I've never taken any of those negative comments and be like, oh my gosh, like that hurts my feelings. Let me change so you guys don't say anything. Like, because then, you know, I'll be getting 200 views on my video.
So I want to talk about going viral and getting comments like that because, I'm as a creator who has had select videos go viral where, most things that go viral wind up in the wrong hands.
Yes.
And those are the pieces of content that you get probably some of the best feedback, but also some of the worst. And it's one thing to respond back to people and kind of clap back and maybe be a little snarky in response and get a laugh out of that.
Hmm.
But then there's a whole other side of how you actually feel internally sitting by yourself at home reading these. So if you can try to remember the early days of going viral and seeing some of those first few mean comments, what was going on internally for you then?
Honestly, for me, like the negative comments that I was getting were so silly. Like it was about the position of my neck, it was about like my eyes being closed. It was nothing that felt like personal to me where I'm like, "Oh, you're like that hit deep." Like it was always something like so trivial. So in the early days, it never hurt my feelings. Like, if I go back a little bit, so that first video that I was talking about that went viral, I wasn't like smiling in the video. I was just setting up my camera and like, just had like a normal face on, like when I'm cooking. And the comments were like, "Oh, you look miserable. You look like you hate your life. Like, why aren't you smiling like while you're doing this?" Stuff like that. And I was like, "Oh, that's like so silly." It's like I was just like being in my kitchen, but if you want me to smile, and that's like when like the smirk came in. I was like, that was kind of like my way of like clapping back of like, "Oh, like, does this look more normal to you? Like me smiling like while I'm in the kitchen the entire time?" And then those comments were like, "Why are you smiling? You look crazy." Like, and so I realized I was like, okay, you really can't win on social media. Like, no
Mm-mm.
matter what way you do it, like no one's gonna like completely agree on everything. So like no matter what I did, someone was gonna say something negative. And it wasn't about like whether I'm smiling or not. It's like what I'm doing in the videos is like making them feel some type of way. Like it's coming from like some personal insecurity or like whatever. They're just a hurt person, like trying to hurt a stranger, and like that makes them feel better for some reason. So I think like once I realized that, which was right away, I was like, people can't say anything that's going to hurt my feelings on here.
And a decent number of your comments these days, it kind of seems to me when I go to your comment section, it's like you see the people who get it,
Mhm.
and then the people who you almost want to be like, "Ugh, you must be new here. Like, this must be your first time landing here." It's
Mhm.
almost like you now have this army defending you of people who are just so on board with the fact that what you're doing is kind of equal parts real, authentic, and who you are, but also you're pushing it a little for the trolls, and it is a little satire. Do you consider what you're doing to be satire and comedy? Like, do you consider yourself a comedian sometimes?
Sometimes at this point I do. I wouldn't call my content satire because it is genuinely what I'm doing. It's like I am like making these things. I'm not mocking anybody. And that's a big piece of what people think. They're like, "Oh, like, why are you mocking?" They'll like call out certain creators and be like, "You're mocking this person. Like, this content is so mean." And I'm like, I'm not mocking anybody. Like, I can tell you
Mhm.
that because I've been doing this for, 2 years now. Like, yes, I'm being funny and some of it, like, I'll use, like, the tiny plastic hands to, like, do certain things.
Yes.
Or,
I
like
wanted to talk about the hands.
so just, like, silly things like that. Because 'cause I'm like, I try to be funny sometimes, and, I like when people laugh at my videos too. It's not me just, like, making a recipe in the kitchen. I try to make it entertaining in other ways too.
And you are an incredible entertainer. For people who haven't seen all this comedy content, I would say some of it is comedy, specifically the posts where you are replying to some of the mean comments. You were outside in a video and someone commented that you needed to mow your lawn, but
Yes.
then wrote something like, "But you must not have the right dress for that," right?
Mhm.
And then Lex makes this video of her getting in this beautiful floral gown and going out to her lawn with scissors. That in conjunction with the tiny hands and just these little things you do in videos that you either know are going to incite rage in some people, but it's also like a little nod to the followers that get you.
Totally.
Another example is the when you call your 3-year-old or your 4-year-old, like, "Come stay at home with my 46-month-old son." I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and a lot of that too is like, I'll read comments and like I'll save a lot of negative comments too because I'm like, oh, I feel like I can come up with something funny to say to that later, or like I'll know that there's like inspiration that will come later to that comment.
Yes.
And so I'll like have it in my back pocket, and then like I'll be going throughout my day and I'll have like this like little idea. And like that's where like the grass cutting one came from. I don't delete comments. I never like discourage anyone from saying like what they want to say because I'm like I get a lot of inspiration from like the negative comments and like the things that people say. So I welcome any and all words. So
I think I know which creator, maybe there are a few, but I think I know which one you're referring to when you say people say you're copying that person. And, I went way back on your TikTok and did a deep dive, and I can tell you the type of content you've been creating for, I think it was January 2023. So a year and a half ago, you were creating content that's in the style of the videos that are currently going viral from
Mhm.
some of these other more tradwife creators or homemaking creators. And it really is just proof you've been doing this. Like, you are so ahead of some of these trends, especially that Cinnamon Toast Crunch video and the, POV, my son asked for this, and then you make this homemade version of something you easily could have gone and bought. You were ahead of your time.
Yeah.
How are you coming up with this content at that time?
I don't even know where the inspiration from that initially came from. I think I was thinking of like trying to think of some text to put on the screen of like, okay, what's gonna like make people stop and like watch this video. And again, it was like the POV trend has like been a thing, but like that verbiage and like that title on the videos, I did that on my own and I see it on a lot of those videos now. Like not that, yeah, not to say that like people copy me, like that's a very like simple thing to like type out and think of, but the cadence of the videos is very similar. So,
You have proof right there that you were doing this a long ways back.
the only things that drive me crazy is when people are like, "Oh, you're copying this creator." I'm like, scroll back. Like I want to like I don't that's the one that I'm just like, please let me correct this because I truly am not copying anybody and I'm not making fun of anybody either. So,
Are you still trying to figure out what to get your dad for Father's Day this year? Because if so, that was me all the way up until last week. My dad is one of those people who is so tricky to shop for, but the one thing that he always loves, without fail, you cannot go wrong, is good food, which is why Omaha Steaks is the perfect gift for him this year. Whether your dad lives close by or far away, you can gift him an unforgettable Father's Day meal with gift packaging starting at just $89 by using the promo code Lucie. Omaha Steaks has so many different options. Every steak and entree is flash frozen, vacuum sealed, and ready to cook whenever you are ready to fire up the grill. Plus, it's all backed by their unconditional 100% money back guarantee. Yes, you heard that right. If you give this to your dad as a gift for Father's Day, please send me a picture so that I can enjoy it too. Go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code Lucie, spelled Lucie, to get exclusive savings. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code Lucie at checkout to save on exclusive packages starting at just $89. Because I did such a deep dive and I was able to go back really far,
uh-huh.
I seem to have seen on TikTok, you had this big time period where every video was doing really well. And then there was maybe a slower season
Mhm.
6 months later, 7 months later. The views really got way different. And I know TikTok's always changing algorithmically, but your content was almost plateauing for a little while. And then it sort of came back again and went wild again. Would
Yeah.
love to hear from your standpoint how much weight and emphasis you put on the views and the metrics and how closely you monitor that and if it makes you feel good or bad or nothing.
Um, so I think the fact so yes, TikTok is like very hit or miss. And when my videos were first going viral, I was like, oh, this is just like my norm now. Like all these videos are gonna do super well. So when they started not doing as well on TikTok, I was kind of like, oh, like maybe these videos aren't as good as I thought they were, or they're not like as funny as I think they are. And that's when I started posting on Instagram, just like moving all that content over there. And my views have always been very consistent on Instagram. So I'm like, okay, it's not so much the content, it's just kind of where I'm putting it and like the algorithm changes and it's a little funky. So I try not to put too much emphasis on like the views that I'm getting because, you can't control that. Like sometimes like if a video flops, I'm like, okay, maybe there was something like not so great about that video. And there's some videos that I know that I posted. I'm like, this isn't my top tier content. It's just kind of like I put something together that day and posted it. And I will say, like going viral, like having a video go viral, it's like a very like addicting feeling. Like it feels really good when a video does really well and it's like getting a lot of shares and a lot of comments. It's like it feels good. And so when you put a lot of effort into a video and it doesn't do so well, like it doesn't feel great.
I was going to ask you your thoughts on TikTok potentially going away, but it does seem like you've translated your audience very successfully to Instagram.
Yeah, because before my following was only on TikTok. I had like a few thousand followers on Instagram, but now it's flopped. So now I've got more on Instagram, not so much on TikTok. So I'm kind of like, TikTok goes away. Like I've got IG still. I'm like, that's my favorite platform right now. So
And Instagram has always felt to me a little bit more of a community. It feels a
totally.
little bit more like the same people are there coming back for your content, whereas TikTok can reach, some really dedicated people will always find you on TikTok.
Mhm.
But otherwise, it's like, who is this video being shown to? I don't even know these names in the comments. It feels very unfamiliar.
very unfamiliar. And I always get messages from people who will be like, TikTok isn't showing me your videos anymore. Like I have to like search for your name. Instagram, I always have like the same people commenting. Like I know that my content, like I know where it's going.
So when you started creating this content, did you have the hopes of turning it into business and getting paid for it eventually, or was it just for fun?
It was in the back of my mind, but I had been making content for so long and, videos not going viral. Like I was not growing a following. I was kind of just following different trends, like doing like little dance videos or like when there's like a viral sound and you like mouth,
Mhm.
I was just doing like what everyone else was doing. And my following was not growing at all. It was just fun for me. It was just like a creative outlet, like being a stay-at-home mom, and I never thought that it would actually turn into a business. Like I just, I was just doing it just to do it. But in the back of my mind too, I'm like, "Oh, that would be so cool to be like a popular content creator," but had no idea how to do that and never thought that it would happen for me. So,
And at this point, have you turned it into a business?
oh yeah. Yeah. In the last year for sure. Yeah.
I want to get into the money. I want to talk a little bit about your rise in this space.
Yeah.
First, because as every content creator knows, this is a slow and steady rise where
Mhm.
you're doing a lot of stuff for free, no one's paying you, and then eventually you kind of get the courage to ask a brand for a rate and you realize that your time is valuable and
Mm.
that you need to be compensated. You don't have to give a brand name, but do you remember the first time that you got compensated for something and how much you were paid?
Ooh, compensated for something. Let me think. Let me think. I want to say it was like a baby, like play mat, like a foam mat, like for a baby to sit on. I want to say I maybe got paid like 150 for a video to like post it on TikTok. No, I'm sorry. My first my first one was this vacuum cleaner. I don't remember what the brand was, but it was like this big vacuum cleaner and they paid me $50 for a video to like share this vacuum cleaner and like make a video and I thought it was so cool. I was like I got this free vacuum cleaner and I made $50. Like that was like amazing to me because I was just like I at that point I was like I didn't know like how to make money off of my content and I was very proud of that like when that happened. So and then from there, slowly realized like okay, these videos like they take some time to make. Like it's a lot of effort and like you start realizing like what your time is worth. And so
It's such a thing with content creators in the beginning because you're creating all this free content and especially if a brand comes to you with a product that you actually want and
mhm.
they offer to give you the product and a little sum of money, it's
Yeah,
almost like, how can I turn this down no matter what the rate is? But at
exactly.
a
Yeah.
certain point, you become in such high demand that you have to only start working with brands that can really reach an appropriate rate.
Yeah.
So, are you comfortable sharing to this day kind of what that range is that you would maybe charge a brand for a TikTok video or an Instagram video?
Um the range, okay, so I guess I could say like the most that I've made recently in like the last few months was oh my gosh, I feel so uncomfortable saying like dollar amounts, but I mean, it is what it is. But it was two videos posted to Instagram and I got paid $24,000 for that.
Amazing.
So 12,000 per video.
And with the following you have, that is a very good rate. Very solid compensation for the amount of work and not just the work, but the value add of all the people that are going to watch it and that trust you and like you.
Right. And that's not every single sponsored post is not that rate. Like it is kind of like it fluctuates because a brand will have I have an agent manager now who like handles all of that for me. So like she knows what an appropriate rate is and she'll go back and forth with a brand and they'll land somewhere that works. Like especially if it's a brand that I really like and I do want to work with and like their rate might not be like as high as we want it, we'll find common ground. So it is like very much all over the board, but there is like a bot like we won't go below a certain rate, because you got to respect like your time and your value and all of that. So,
Yes, and it's so helpful to have management and
yes.
someone being the bad cop in in these conversations.
Totally. And that was something I've been working with her for about maybe like 8 months now, something like that. But before then, I had no idea. I was just like I just didn't know what a video was worth or like what advertising was worth. So I would do videos for like a couple $100 and like that to me was like cool. That was like a win for me. And the brands were like, absolutely. Like,
The
that's amazing.
brands were like, this is a win for us.
Yes, and so when, Leah found me and I started working with her and she was, like, telling me, like, what I should be charging, I was like, "Oh, dear God, okay." So, that's been life-changing for sure.
That's incredible. I'm so happy for you and your business.
Thank you.
We have something in common, which is that we've both been asked on live TV how much we make for a salary. When I was asked this question, it was years ago on Fox News, and I was so uncomfortable. It was obviously before I started this podcast, before I became so transparent about my business's revenue, and now there's literally an episode of this show that opens up about all of that. But I remember in the moment being asked that on live TV, panicking, blood rushing to my cheeks, and giving him this extremely vague answer about how it's a very lucrative industry if you have the right team and work hard. Whatever I said, I don't remember because I blacked out.
Yeah.
But you were on live TV recently. We will get into that interview in a little bit, but you were asked what you make. I don't think I saw that part of the interview. Was that cut out of the digital version?
I'm not sure, and honestly, I haven't even, like, gone through and watched the whole episode online. I know it's online somewhere. They might have cut it. I'm not sure, but I know it's not anything that I haven't posted that on my socials. They didn't post that part, but it might be out there somewhere, but the live audience saw it, so
And how did you respond when you were asked?
Oh, I choked because I was like, I feel like it's like not inappropriate, but it's like a rude question almost to be like, so how much money do you like? You would never ask like someone you're meeting in real life that. Like I would never walk up to you and be like, Lucy, how much money do you make? You know,
Mhm.
like that. So when she asked, I was like, oh, like is she being funny? And I didn't answer right away, and she was like, no, how much money do you make? And so I gave like a vague answer too, and I was like, well, enough to like pay all the bills in my household if I have to, but I don't do that because my husband does that. But so a vague answer.
I love diving into this topic on the show, and not for the purpose of making people feel uncomfortable or making it necessarily a rude, invasive question, because of course people are uncomfortable. And even you said when I asked you the rate of a post, it felt hard for you to get the dollar amount out of your lips. And what I find is interesting, and kind of where I like to go on this podcast, is unpacking why we feel uncomfortable with that.
Hmm.
Do you have any thoughts around why it feels stressful for you to share that? Because, for some people, they might say, well, I feel like it's a lot and it just feels, I don't want people to think that am making more than I deserve based on what I do and the fact that my job is like so fun and cushy and whatnot. I'm
Hmm.
so curious what your reason is for is it just innate, a sense of discomfort around money?
I think it's innate. I think like growing up, I, at least, yeah, like when I was younger, it was like rude to like talk about money or like ask people about money. And like, but when I like hear other people talk about money, it is interesting. And I am curious, like how much people make. I never like observe those conversations and be like, oh, this is inappropriate. And it makes me feel uncomfortable. It is more like, yeah, like growing up a certain way. And then also almost like there's a little bit of guilt around it, which is straight, like not silly, but like this is my job and it is something that like I worked for like a really long time like making like free videos and I still do make like free content like all my videos aren't like sponsored posts, like I'm regularly like pumping out like video like for fun and sharing it online and then occasionally like I'll get a sponsored post. It's just more money than I thought I would ever make and it is fun. So like I think that's another reason why there's like guilt wrapped in with it, like, almost like you can't, like, make money and, like, have fun.
Especially as a woman, I don't know, maybe it's that, but I think about this field, and we live in such a weird time where, unfortunately, everyone's kind of glued to their devices and phones, and so people are becoming the commodities of creating the content for others to spend their time watching. So on the one hand, it is a very traditional model of people creating entertaining content, just like old school TV producers and movie makers. It's
Mhm,
just that there are now so many micro people all around doing this. I don't know. People have in their head a vision of what an influencer is or
mhm,
what a content creator is. And they kind of peg a lot of these people as people that have no talent, that are just shooting the shit, making content. They think it's easy. It's like everyone has a phone.
Mhm.
And really, at the end of the day, to become a creator of the caliber that you're at and to build an audience that you've built and get the views and engagement that you get is not an easy task. It's not an easy feat. It's simultaneously very difficult to obtain, but then it just looks so fun and easy that there's this sense of, do you deserve that type of pay?
Yes, exactly. I think people don't see any value in it. Like they're like, "Oh, like this is just silly. Like you're in your kitchen baking, like making food for your kids. Like I do this all the time without a camera." And like I'll get a lot of comments like that. I'm like, "That's amazing. Like that's not knocking you for not filming it. Like I choose to film it and like this is like how I make income for my family and like yes, I'm enjoying it at the same time, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable because you're here watching it. Like it is a form of entertainment. Like people spend so much time on Instagram and TikTok and like even myself, like just scrolling and it's like a way to like I guess unwind or like people do it for different reasons. Like there is value in it or else it wouldn't exist.
And when you were growing up, do you remember how much money and finances were talked about in your house?
I remember like a few conversations like as a kid, nothing like super specific. Like my parents being stressed about money at certain points and being like having a conversation with each other that like should have been private, like something like about like oh, like you guys can forget about Christmas this year, like stuff like that.
Mm.
Like you just see your parents stressed about, finances. You don't get it when you're little. But now it's like I don't ever want to be in like a situation where I can't like pay for something for my kids or like have something to like make us more comfortable or, just like different things. So
So, not to replicate the rude question that made you so uncomfortable on live TV.
okay, it caught me off guard that time. I'm ready now.
Okay, she's ready. She's in the right headspace. And, as you know, you can always tell me that you don't want to share it or don't want to talk about it at all. But we
Yeah.
do ask this question on this podcast is, are you comfortable sharing how much or a rough range of how much gross revenue your business has been able to make in the past year?
In the past year, I will say from like October of last year to currently. So what is that? Like 6 months or no? Yeah, it's about 6 months.
Yeah, about 6 months.
Uh, like around 150K.
It is interesting that consumers just sort of show up on the internet and expect everything to be free. And listen, for them, it is free.
Yeah,
Unless someone has a subscription on Instagram or a paywall in front of something, you are getting everything for free. But these people have to be compensated by someone to be making the content. So I
right.
don't know. I almost feel I love when my followers are supportive of brand partners because the
Mhm.
brands are basically allowing them to get what they're getting for
Totally.
no charge.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that figure. Congratulations for building such a lucrative business.
Thank you.
If you listened to my episode with my dad from a couple of months ago, you know that the rock and roll king, Jimmy Fink, has no shortage of incredible stories to share. From meeting with music legends to dancing at Studio 54, his stories really never get old, and I want them to be immortalized forever. If you feel this way about your own dad or a father figure in your life, I have the perfect Father's Day gift idea for you, and that is StoryWorth. So here's how it works. Each week, StoryWorth will email your loved one thought-provoking questions that you get to help choose. Then all they have to do is respond to that email with their story. And they can be long and detailed or short and sweet, whatever they want. And then after a year of responses, StoryWorth compiles their stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake book for you. Michael and I gifted StoryWorth to his grandparents a few years back. They wrote these long, elaborate answers to all of our questions, and we gave copies of the final book to all of Michael's cousins. And especially since his grandfather passed away this past year, it has been so special to us to have this keepsake. StoryWorth is such a thoughtful gift idea because it tells someone just how much you care about their life and stories. And with Father's Day coming up, you can get $10 off your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/realstuff. That's storyworth.com/realstuff to save $10 on your first purchase, all while giving someone the most thoughtful gift. You've now referred to yourself as a stay-at-home mom a couple times here, and also I've heard you say it.
Mhm.
And what I have been thinking through and finding fascinating is that you and I, we technically do the same thing on a daily basis in terms of we have our social platforms, we show up, we create content, we engage with our audience, we work with brands, but you call yourself a stay-at-home mom and I don't.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm wondering why we have these two paths. Is it because I also have childcare for my son after he comes home from school and he has a nanny, so I'm not the stay-at-home and you don't have that? Is that kind of where that discrepancy lies?
Well, for me personally, I think that is why I call myself that because I am the one like staying home with my kids. I don't have a nanny. Like that would be nice at this point because I am so busy. I'm like, oh, it would be wonderful to like have some help, but I also don't know where to begin like finding help. So I've just always called myself a stay-at-home mom because my responsibilities have never shifted. Like when I had my first son, like I was very much just a stay-at-home mom. I wasn't creating content. I wasn't doing anything besides like baking cakes on the weekend, you know? Now being like also a full-time content creator, I'm still also doing like all those same things. I haven't brought anybody in to like take those responsibilities off my plate, so I've never shifted away from the term, but I think that's for me where it lies.
And I know your kids are very young, but are you currently homeschooling them? Are you planning to homeschool them once they become of kindergarten age?
Yeah, so they will be homeschooled. We've started a little bit. So we have a Waldorf online homeschool curriculum that we follow. It's called Wonder Garden. They're amazing. You might have seen their stuff on Instagram before, but they have like an online homeschool program for young kids. So we've started doing that, but my kids are quite young, so we do like a very mild version of it. But once they are like kindergarten, first like school age, we're still gonna homeschool them. So
So you said you have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. When are you creating this content and how are you squeezing this into your week?
during that time, usually once they are like in their rooms doing like the little one's sleeping, the older one's in his room, like having his like maybe nap. He'll lay there and try to sleep for a while, but he sits in there quietly so brother can nap and all that stuff. So that's when I do like the bulk of my filming. And then if my husband's home from work, he'll play with them outside and I'll film stuff. So like I said, I've got a lot on my plate right now. It's a little too much. Like I definitely am spread a little thin with the content creation and then also like just mom life, getting stuff done like whenever I can during the day.
So you mentioned maybe wanting childcare at some point. Is that something you've considered or do you just so strongly identify with being a stay-at-home mom that that doesn't feel right for you?
It's not that it doesn't feel right for me. Like I just like doing all the things. Like I like making their meals. I like doing nap time. It's like I can't think of an area that I'm comfortable like giving
Releasing?
yeah, and I think that's like my own I don't know what it is. I just have a very hard time like letting go. I'm like these are my babies. Like I want to do all the things and like we've had babysitters before like if like my husband and I go out on a date but it's like after they've gone to bed at night.
I want to discuss division of labor a little bit in your household between you and your husband, especially after becoming parents.
Mhm.
Knowing that you don't necessarily identify with the trad wife term, but you have shared different things that sort of fit into the category of being a trad wife, such as being the homemaker, doing the cooking, tending to the children while your husband is out working and being the breadwinner. So,
Mhm.
what are the roles in your guys' marriage and when it comes to parenting?
Yeah, my husband, he leaves during every so he owns his own business. So he owns a coffee shop here in San Diego and so
Ooh,
that is
that's a fun job.
a fun job, fun for me because I get free
Yeah.
but it's a lot of work for him, but that's very much like he has to be there every day. He's been like up until this point like responsible for like paying all the bills, like all the finances, all that stuff. And then I'm home with the kids all day long, taking care of house stuff, cooking meals. And there's been like since I've gotten more busy with like content creation and doing things like this, like right now he's home. So he came home from work to he's outside playing with the boys so I can do
Mhm.
this. So there's like a little bit of overlap now. Like if I do need help during the day, like he'll jump in and like help with the kids or he might cook dinner sometimes, but it's still pretty like home things is on me, like grocery shopping, all that stuff. And then like the finances are like his thing that he deals with. So
However, is your business and this brand you're now building for yourself rivaling his income, or is he still bringing in way more than you? And you can totally tell me you're not comfortable answering that.
I think I did say already on TV, but I think I do make more than the business does now, but there's not been like a shift of like financial responsibility. So,
I mean, when you say he's paying the bills, you just mean he's the one physically signing the checks and sending the money off, but it is your joint money that he's pulling from.
well, we have separate bank accounts. So he's like always had like his own bank account. I have my own bank account. And then when I wasn't working, when I was just staying home, like I had an account that he would like put money into. So like if I wanted to like go shopping or like buy things or like put gas in my car, that's like how I would get money. But we've never had like a shared bank account. So the bills still all come from like his account. But now I'm like, I don't need you to put money in my account. So like we don't do that anymore. I bought my own car, so now I like have my own car payment, like stuff like that. Like it's not so now I don't have to like ask for money to like do things. Whereas before, like he had all the money. So if I wanted something, if I wanted to go shopping, then it was like a question of like, can I buy this? And so it's nice to like not have to do that.
Can we talk a little bit about your guys' decision to keep separate bank accounts?
I don't think it was ever like it was never even like a conversation. It was just kind of like we got married and there was never like, oh, should we like start a bank account together?
In the past, when you would go to, say, the grocery store and buy food, or if you were going and getting something for the kids,
Yeah.
were you, I assume at that point, you were using his credit card or spending
Right.
his money to do stuff like that?
Right. So I just always had his credit card. So if I, yeah, needed to buy something, I would just use that.
So now when you go out to get something for the kids, do you put your own card down or do you still use his for that? Because that's like a family expense.
Yeah, I just use my own card now. Like like if I'm going out with the kids or something, because now it's so like, like I know like all the bills are being paid for. Like I'm not like paying the mortgage, I'm not paying for like health insurance, like all these things. So now I'm like, I don't need the credit card anymore because I've got my own money that I can spend. And it's like, it doesn't really matter because like all this stuff's still getting paid for. But now it's like,
I'm just so fascinated. I love this conversation because when my husband and I got married, we immediately created a new bank account. I don't know, we very much view it as if we go to the grocery store and we put down a credit card, it's just this lump sum where everything's coming from and ultimately going to be paid from. So it's interesting to me to hear about parents and especially with kids in the mix
Mhm.
going to the grocery store and mom saying, I'm paying for this or dad's paying for this. I'm so curious if you guys are thinking that you will ever put everything into one big pool or if you like having it separate.
Maybe it's just this is also like so very new to me. Like it was like end of last year that I was like, oh, I'm actually making like a decent income that I like have enough money in my bank account that I feel comfortable just like paying for the things that I want and like paying for like groceries and like things like that and like not like feeling it, like
Mhm.
so it's all just like very new that we haven't been like, oh, let's transition like the way that we do our finances. It's all still kind of the same ish. But then I'm like, okay, well, maybe like I'm not paying the mortgage. So maybe I can just like pay for groceries, and I don't have to think about it because it's like I don't have any other bills. So I just gave him his credit card back and I was like, well, I think I still have it, but I just like stopped using it so he could pay it off because,
Right. So you have these two boys that you're now raising in a pretty traditional family style where actually they do have a mom who works and is making money, but
yeah.
very much a style where it all started was dad has the money, dad works, mom's raising us, mom's cooking, mom's schooling us. Is there anything that you're doing to maybe teach your kids that specifically because they're going to be men
Hmm.
that maybe not every woman in their future is going to be like mom or is going to make a home like that and that some moms work out of the house, some moms have jobs, some aren't cooking at home and just kind of teaching them that there are other options, or do you really feel like they're becoming used to this and are going to like look for partners like that one day?
They probably do think this is just like what everyone's mom does. When they grow up, it's like there are things that like I want them to have like standards for their partner. So it's like there are things that like I would hope that they would like see me doing and like try to find someone. I don't know. Not that I want them to like find someone like me, but like I want them to have like some sort of like standard of like, okay, someone that can like cook or clean or like, take care of house things. And I also want them to be like very capable of doing those things too. Like, I guess more what I'm trying to do is like make them a really good partner because I teach them a lot of like what I do here. They're in the kitchen with me all the time. Like, I just want them to be like good men when they grow up and find like a good woman. Not that it has to be someone like me. I don't think they need to find, oh, you're just like my mom, so I want to marry you. Like, I just want them to be like a great partner so they can like find a great partner. I want like a cool daughter-in-law.
Does your husband do any of the housework at all?
He'll like do like the gross stuff, like taking out the trash, like when he comes home, or like, rolling the trash cans out to the side of the yard. If there's like things that I don't feel comfortable doing that I don't want to do, like I'll have him do, but not that he like won't do dishes or won't like fold laundry because he absolutely will. But it's like those are just things that I generally have already taken care of because it's like so worked into my routine. Mowing the lawn, he'll mow the lawn, things like that.
I was wondering if there were ever times when you wish he would help or wish he would do more things that he isn't doing just because of the kind of roles that things have fallen into.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like just like a general like man thing of like being like, "Oh, what can I help you with?" And I'm like, "Look around, like take a pic. There's toys on the floor." Like I don't want to have to like say like, "Oh, can you go do this?" So there's times like that where I'm like I will see something that like needs to be done and I like prefer that he would like also recognize that that needs to be done and like just go do it instead of me having to ask him to do it.
Mhm.
But like if I do ask to do it, like he will 100% do it. So I guess that's like the only thing that I'll say, but I feel like that's a pretty common theme in like a lot of homes that I've noticed of like just like look around and like pick something to do.
Knowing that you guys kind of started this marriage and your relationship in this more traditional way, and now you've kind of navigated to this place where, as you said, your business is bringing in potentially more than his business, and you are working. I don't even know the word, but it's very interesting to hear you talk about how it feels to have to ask him for money or to ask for a card, and almost not that it's submissive, but you are, in that case, one rung down a little in terms of being in control and having power. How does it feel now to have your own finances and be at the place you're at in terms of you're still part of this marriage where you have these very clearly defined gender roles, but now you have very much broken out of that?
Yeah, it feels really good. One of the reasons I don't fit into like the trad wife category is like I am just like by nature not a submissive person. Like I don't think I could ever just be like you are above me in any way. And like I am very like strong-willed and like I like having independence and like doing things for myself. Always been that way. When I was in a position where like I wasn't making money, I internally struggled with that a lot because I like my freedom. I like being able to just like buy things when I want to buy things or it's just, everyone wants to like have their own money. And so for so long like I wasn't really able to do that just because I was so heavily taking care of the kids and like that's what like I want to do. Like that is like what I wanted for myself, but it's wonderful being able to do that and then also still have be making an income. So it's like the best of both worlds for me at this point. And I feel very thankful and lucky that I've been able to do that, that I didn't have to leave the house to like have money. It's like, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I also wanted that piece of like having my own income. And so it's been great.
Yeah, you've really figured out how to do it in the best of both worlds kind of way, like you
Yeah.
said. I want to get into this TV interview that you did recently. So you were on the Tamron Hall Show. Before I say anything that I felt about the interview, how
Mhm.
did you feel being on the show?
So it was a really great experience. It was really, really cool. They flew me to New York. I stayed, I mean, it was chaotic getting there. I was in New York for less than like 12 hours. I was like in and out very quick. The show, I was very nervous going on it because I've never been on like live TV like that in front of a live audience. And she was very kind. Like when I sat down with her before the cameras were rolling, like it was very just pleasant. Everyone was very, very nice. When I posted the clip from the interview is when I was kind of like, oh wait, was she was she being rude to me? I don't know, because that was like everyone else's perception. But I think while I was there in the interview, I was so nervous that I was just kind of like, I just don't want to like say anything stupid or like look stupid, that I didn't really notice that I was being cut off a lot until people were pointing it out. And so I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I don't know. So I mean, it was cool. I enjoyed the experience, but also like it was not a great, I don't think I got to like say anything really. So
First of all, as a viewer, I just felt like you were so sweet and innocent and charming and just, kind. Everything you should have been on live TV, you were. I don't know if I would use the word mean or rude in terms of how the interview was conducted, but I just definitely got the sense that whether it was her or just the way her script was written, it was coming off a little judgy
mm,
towards you and your lifestyle and almost trying to catch you, just trying to like out you for something, which I was sitting
yeah,
there being like, what are we outing this sweet girl for? She loves taking care of her kids. She likes making bread. I mean, I think she was highlighting a clip where you made your own paper and crayons for your boys and
yeah,
was kind of pointing out like this has to be
fake.
satire. Like this has to be fake. You have to be faking it. And I don't know, it made me feel uncomfortable watching it because I'm the exact opposite. Okay, not exact. I'm a little opposite of you in that I very much feel like career driven and I have this full-time nanny. My son's in school half the day and then he's with the nanny the rest of the day. After I had him, I just felt inspired to go back to work
Mhm.
and I work from home, so I do see him multiple times throughout the day, but I'm working. Even a person like me who chose that and whatever, I can still look at you and see what you've chosen and not feel like it needs to be categorized or like I need to judge the decision you've made. And I felt like some of the questions about being submissive or your husband bringing in the money, just, I didn't love it. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I almost didn't get, like, the point of the interview. I was like, I'm not sure what response was wanted about it, because it was just kind of, like, showing me clips and being like, "This looks like a skit from SNL," and I'm like, "Okay." And
And there were just a couple of moments of, I don't even know, a couple moments of her saying something that was a little bit judgmental or not kind that the audience would chuckle at. And
Mm.
it felt a little bit like the show wanted to bring you on there to kind of embarrass you or to kind of almost in a negative way put some of the stuff that you're doing on display and catch you in it.
Yeah, I think like the context of the entire show, it was to have people like me that are stay-at-home moms and, do all the homemaking things, and then ex-trad wives that talk about like how terrible and like awful that lifestyle is and like toxic and kind of like back and forth. But it felt like the ex-trad wives were like, it was like, oh yeah, like you get it. Like you're almost like the trad wives were like dumb. The stay-at-home moms were like dumb for like, staying home and like just focusing on like their kids and their house and like how like silly that is and that you should go and pursue your own, like I don't know. The tone of it was just a little bit weird to me.
It
So,
is a very single-minded view of things to bring on the ex-trad wives who obviously have something negative to say, and then people who are currently identifying as homemakers and fitting more traditional roles in a marriage. It just feels like it's trying to make a statement about one being better or
better than the
worse.
other. Yeah, there's like a right and a wrong. Yeah.
I was almost waiting for you. I was hoping you would say to her at some point when she was being a little snarky, I don't know. I was
Mhm.
waiting for you to be like, "Oh, I feel like you don't it seems you don't get it." Like it's going over your head.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But watching back, I'm like, "Oh, there's, like" in hindsight, you always think of, like,
Yes.
different ways to handle it, but in the moment, like I said, I was so nervous, and I was just kind of, like, just trying to answer the questions and be eloquent with my answers. It was, like, me taking, like, a half-second pause to, like, collect myself was just like, "Oh, next question." I was like, "Okay."
Yes. Well, it's really hard to do that on live TV. Only in hindsight, when you listen back, you're like, "Oh, I should have said this or I shouldn't have said that." But
Yeah.
I thought you did a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, she was super nice in person. Like, like, while I was there, I never felt, like, uncomfortable or, like, "Oh, I feel, like, embarrassed." Like, it was overall a great experience, but then, like, the feedback from everyone made me go, like, "Oh, maybe it wasn't." the most kindly intentioned interview. I don't
Which
know.
is not always the host's fault. Obviously, there's a million people that work on a show.
Right. And like part of it too, I was like, well, maybe like, there's like time limits, like it is live and like you gotta like cut at some point. So I was like, maybe I'm just like talking too slow. I don't know. But
And I have to say, when I first saw your content, I definitely was looking at it. I was trying to figure out if you were aware of the neck tilt. And, I was trying to look at your reaction to some of the comments and how does she feel about this? Then at a certain point, when you really started exaggerating the things people were calling you out for, I was like, this girl is a marketing genius. And it really became clear that, a handful of your followers got it and a handful didn't. And now talking to you, I actually just think you're just a very nice, sweet, lovely human who, yes, in some ways you're capitalizing on the algorithm and you know what the people want or don't want. So you're
Mhm.
kind of doing that. But I don't think your whole platform is quite as contrived as people think. I really think you're just doing what you love innately and what is coming naturally to you and showing it and being a little silly, humorous, and yourself at the same time.
Totally. Yeah, that's really all it is. And yeah, like you said, like there's like this handful of people. I mean, it's a pretty good handful now of people that like get it and enjoy it. I don't have to say anything. I don't have to like defend myself anymore and be like, you just don't get it because other people will tell them for me.
Where do you think this business is going? What are your aspirations for the future?
My goal for a long time has been to have a cookbook because like my true passion is just like being in the kitchen and like baking and just making delicious things. So like that's what my goal like outside of social media has been for a while, is to develop my own cookbook. And I think that just having this platform will just help that a lot.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, because I definitely don't want to just be not like stuck. Like I love creating content, but I want to do more than just that. I don't want to just like make these videos forever and like that be it. Like I definitely have like goals outside of just social media. So,
So for people who don't know you and haven't followed you yet, where can we find you?
yep. So I'm at lex.delarosa on Instagram and TikTok. That's where you can find me. Those are my two main platforms. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you for having me. This was so great.
I hope I didn't make you too uncomfortable with some of the money questions.
No. I got a little taster for it a few weeks ago. So I was more in a better mental state for it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to The Real Stuff. I'm Lucie Fink. Don't forget to follow the show on social media at The Real Stuff Pod. And if you're liking these episodes, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a written review. It helps the show so much. And if you're feeling called to come on the show, visit luciefink.com/apply and tell us your story. We'll see you next week for another intimate conversation on The Real Stuff.